Hi everyone, and welcome to today's presentation, Why is Reference Data Governance Mission Critical? I would like to start by introducing you to today's speaker. We have Aaron Zornes joining us today. Aaron is Chief Research Officer at the MDM Institute. We also have Bob DuCharme joining us. Bob is Senior Semantic Solutions Architect at TopQuadrant. Let's take a look at today's agenda. As part of today's webinar, we will be covering the following. Why is reference data governance mission critical? How does reference data management differ from or similar to master data management, MDM? What are the top 10 technical evaluation criteria? What capabilities do enterprises see as the most important for the success of RDM? TopQuadrant's approach for reference data governance, and then we'll have a brief Q&A at the end of the webinar. Just to cover a few logistical items before we get started today, please feel free to ask questions as we go along by using your GoToWebinar controls. To post questions, please look on the right-hand side control panel. You should see a drop-down box for questions, and if you click on the box, you should be able to post your question at any time during today's presentation. We will address as many questions as time allows at the conclusion of today's webinar. We will also be recording today's webinar and will send a link to the recorded version as well as to the slides. With that, Aaron, I think we're ready to get started. I'll hand it over to you.
Great. Thank you, Christy. Hopefully, Christy and Bob, you guys can see my About the MDM Institute chart.
Yes.
Where we are is the MDM Institute was founded roughly 10 years ago. We have an advisory council of some 150 or so very large companies that we give advice to about their master data management, reference data management, and data governance initiatives. We run a number of conferences around the world. Most recently in New York City, we do these 8 cities around the world, and we've been doing this for 10 years. And that's a great opportunity for us to get together with about 3,000 IT professionals who have some skin in the game regarding master data management, reference data management, etc. And we'll talk more about that later when we talk about the surveys and where the survey pool comes from, etc. First of all, we should also remind ourselves what is reference data, because that's a very common question we get, is what's the difference between reference data and master data in particular? In most organizations, the people that are in charge of their master data management programs think of party and thing as the 2 primary domains, party and thing, and that is, customer, citizen, and product supplier. And reference data turns out to be an equally important domain for a lot of us, in the sense that it has a lot of influence on how our organizations execute in terms of data quality and our ability to overall coordinate processes throughout our business and even with our business partners. And very simply put, reference data is simply lists or code lists or tables of values that are relatively static, that have some semantic value built in. For example, ISO, International Standard Organization country codes, currency codes, your own company's departmental codes or SKUs, stock keeping units, etc. These are all examples of reference data, relatively slow changing, if you like. Now, there are also private and public forms of reference data we'll be talking about in a minute. Why is reference data so important to most every organization? Well, we use reference data as sort of the glue, or the, if you like, the lingua franca among applications, so that they can talk and execute with each other and coordinate. And so when we have errors in our reference data, it has a rippling effect or a viral effect where it spirals further out throughout our systems and causes all sorts of potentially disastrous, if not a systemic failure even. The most classic example is when you're talking to your executives as an IT professional and they're asking you, why do the totals not fit out across these 2 reports? One report says we have X number of customers, and this other report says we have Y number of customers, or similar, or even financial reports not showing the same values, okay, which is very, very consequential when you look at compliance, etc. So the number of full-time students, the number of full-time, the number of customers in a certain size, etc., or in geography for enterprise risk management, these are all critical values that we need to manage. So reference data management, or RDM, is needed both on the operational side to allow our applications to execute and hand off transactions among themselves. It's also needed on the analytical side to help manage the attributes about our data marts. And not just the attributes about our data marts, but about our data lakes. These big data Hadoop systems, etc., we need to make sure that they are synchronized and coordinated so that we have common reporting attributes across them, again, so that we don't have the same problem that we had with data marts historically. So reference data is also a way that many organizations get started in master data management, because they see it as something that's more approachable than boiling the ocean when it comes to customer master or product master. And IT often has budget on their own to go off and solve such infrastructure type problems or issues such as reference data coordination among applications. So in any case, I think you would agree that poor reference data is a leading cause of failures in many, many departments and enterprises, and even between enterprises. We said there are different types of reference data. Well, there are also different types of reference data management software. On the right-hand column, at the top header, we have real-time reference data management. Real-time is the pedal-to-the-metal type high-performance reference data systems that you might see on the stock exchanges or the bourses, et cetera, where they're managing their product attributes and derivatives, et cetera, and it's really real-time type performance. Classical reference data is not so much that level of real-time, but in a lot of sense it feels like batch, or it feels like publish subscribe type models, so that we're not that real-time. We will be online perhaps. As we onboard new customers, we want to make sure that their data perhaps matches to certain reference tables so that we don't pollute or somehow dilute our master customer data. But in any case, we've renamed or we've given a name to that class of reference data that we're talking about today, not the real-time, but the other type for the rest of us who are not capital markets people would be characterized as multi-domain reference data management. And there we'll be looking at different types of multi-domain data, such as public sources, again, the Federal Information Processing Standards, the North American Industrial Classification Code, NAICS, etc. There's private data within your company for reference data, how you organize and see the world as financial entities or geographical entities. For example, is Mexico part of North America or is it part of Latin America? That may differ depending upon your legal or your financial view of the world. And likewise, we also have some semi-private or shared data where we take external data such as Dun & Bradstreet's, Dunn's hierarchies, etc., and we may further add value or manipulate those to match the way that we see the world, and so we further created yet another category of reference data. So in any case, our reference data management platforms that we use to manage this reference data need to be able to support multiple domains or types of reference data. And when we look at our survey that we'll talk about later, the survey has also captured the same idea that a large number of organizations are focused on public reference data, as you might expect, syndicated data sources that we bring into our company, whether it's IATA airline codes or ICD 910 type, medical classification codes and so on. And likewise, there's a huge amount of internal or private reference data that we use when we manage our hierarchies about enterprise risk management, sales organization structures, and the sort of orgs that we have with our Salesforce type application. So clearly, we need to be able to manage all these different types of reference data. Now, historically, we've lived without having commercial reference data management software. We've lived all the years of that IT has been in existence. However, it wasn't the perfect world. I mean, some people would take spreadsheets, Excel, and try to make that their reference data. And of course, you might imagine with just using Excel by itself, it is difficult to govern because you don't have built-in processes and workflows. It's not necessarily with an audit trail. It doesn't have the hierarchy management that we would like to see in order to manage the semantics and the crosswalks among RDM domains. And so here we've listed out a good number of the alternatives that people have used historically. They might even take their pool or transparent tables in SAP and force fit and say those are our reference tables. If it doesn't exist in SAP, then that's our reference table. Or we might take certain tables out of Siebel CRM or out of Salesforce itself and say those are our golden sets of reference data. And of course, those all have problems. So clearly, these are not advisable because they either overburdened a software platform that was not meant to do that, or the software platform simply did not have the governance capabilities, and it didn't have the, if you like, the publishing type capabilities to be able to push that reference data out via Java messaging service or an enterprise service bus, or however we want to publish, subscribe the data to the consumers of our reference data. So these were ways that historically we had to live to get through the day, however, as IT professionals. Now the good news is that coming to market are a good number of commercial off-the-shelf software that do purpose-built reference data management. So to further understand the dynamics of the marketplace, analyst firms like my company, the MDM Institute, will execute market surveys. And the good news is my company has access to 3,000 or so people a year that attend my MDM and data governance summits. We also have a good number of webcasts historically that we've done on reference data that give us access to more people. Then there are also a good number of LinkedIn special interest groups that give us access to promote participation. So when we do a survey, it's not going out to random people who trip across a website or an email list looking for a $5 Starbucks card as a give back. What we do when we do a survey is we make sure they're qualified and interested parties, because it's not easy to get people to take 10 minutes out of their daily business life to tell you what they're doing. So we have to have a relationship with these people. And thanks to my series of global conferences, as well as prior webcasts, as well as LinkedIn, we're able to connect with a good number of people. And so that's our survey approach, is to go to interested, valid parties, decision makers. And so when we surveyed this pool of respondents, we asked them about their current and future RDM plans. We also wanted to see what are their attitudes about cloud, what are their attitudes about certain spend rates, and which implementation partners they had as top of mind possible candidates to help them stand it up and get it running, and so on. And so we did do what we would consider a sufficiently rigorous methodology to get the right people to answer the right questions. It's also interesting to note that at the Master Data and Data Governance, the MDM and Data Governance Summits that I run around the world, these 3,000 people a year that come to these 8 cities, they have told us that reference data is a vital topic to them. I haven't seen this at any other conferences around the world, and it's sort of a mystery to me, because we didn't do this on purpose. Our attendee base at the MDM and Data Governance Summits, they're the ones who suggested the topics, and with our advisory councils and so on, and our board, we picked the topics and the speakers, and they made it very clear to us that reference data management, or just reference data, however they wanted to characterize it, was an important topic. So if you look here, these are just some of the last year, some of the topics that were presented in North America and in Europe. In particular, I'm looking at Cargill, the bottom. Cargill is the largest privately held company on the planet. You know, they're like $200 billion company. And they are very much interested in coordinating their various units via enterprise-type reference data. Likewise, if you look at the banks, the insurance companies, high-tech companies, it's there. Okay, the Blue Cross Blue Shields, etc. It's there. Reference data is an important topic for all of us. Now, just to give you an idea that this is an ongoing survey, that we have done this before, and we just did it again. Here's who the respondents were in 2014. Actually, this is a subset of the respondents. Okay, so again, you know, Department of Homeland Security, Carolinas Healthcare, Zurich Insurance, WellPoint, State Farm, Standard Bank of South Africa. These are all big, ANZ Bank. These are all very large companies, and it's a broad, diverse group of organizations that are looking to reference data management solutions to solve the classic problem of reference data. Now, 2015, here's again a list of the companies, or partial list, that took part in the survey. And again, if we look at Westpac in the fourth column, that's the 7th largest bank in the world out of Sydney, Australia. ATP out of Denmark, that's the pension fund, that's Social Security in Denmark, in effect. So we do have rather large companies and a broad base, global base of companies and governmental organizations that are telling us that reference data is a vital topic to them. So when we look at the people that we were targeting and the people we did get for this survey, they were enterprise level IT executives or managers. In particular, enterprise architects, solution architects, data architects, These are the people that are the gatekeepers or have great influence on the budget for reference data management. Again, IT understands this is more of a business problem, an IT problem than a business problem. Okay? So typically reference data is seen as an IT challenge for infrastructure more so than a specific business problem solution. The exception might be when you have regulatory compliance issues and the CFO or the COO are breathing down IT's neck saying, we've got to fix these reports. And here's the budget, go do it. But many times, IT is doing this as an IT-driven project more so than the classical MDM program, which is more of a business-driven solution. So again, we got the right people to take the survey, which was great. Now, it's also important to say, or to find out from the survey panel, what are your current capabilities and how do you feel about that? And clearly, although they have programs, 70, 80, 90% had formal programs on average, they weren't satisfied to the degree that they want to be. Okay? They typically, as you will see later, are using those not advisable platforms to deliver reference data. And so there is hope on the horizon, or in the marketplace now, I should say. And so that was the purpose of the survey, was to find out where people are and where they want to go. And in particular, of course, the survey was a little bit self-serving or biased in the sense that we asked people who were interested in reference data to tell us what they're doing. So if they were interested, you would assume that they had budget. That's not always the case. As you might know, a lot of organizations have challenges with their budgets. A good number of businesses are still climbing out of the global financial crisis. And in any case, IT doesn't have, carte blanche, blank checks to write for whatever they want to do. So the good news was that 60% of the people who had an interest in reference data, more than 60%, are planning on doing something with a commercial platform. And so that was important for us because, again, we wanted to understand what are their requirements when they're looking at a commercial piece of reference data management software, and what are their best practices, et cetera. When we look at the budget, it's true that a lot of the vendors that provide reference data management software, including some of the MDM vendors, may offer an entry-level product price of $250,000 or $500,000, et cetera. In reality, for the large organizations, it's a multi-million-dollar project. Okay, if you're a large company like United Technologies or General Electric, clearly, or Cargill, we're talking about even tens of millions of dollars to execute at that level to do reference data. You might say, well, isn't it simply Excel spreadsheet on steroids? No, it's more than that, because you have to rework a good number of your legacy apps and the rest of your enterprise application portfolio to take advantage of the new, better way of managing reference data. Okay, so once you set up reference data governance in a RACI type model, a more robust, sustainable model of software implementation, once you've got that type of reference data governance in effect, then you want to take advantage of it, and it also means it's not just a standalone nice thing to look at. It's not the end product. The end product is integrating and publishing that reference data and having those applications take advantage of it. Not to mention reorganizing some of the subject matter experts, the processes, the stewards, the trustees, et cetera, to begin managing that reference data, however you structured your governance of the reference data. So clearly, there is budget, there is interest, although you might start with $250,000, $500,000, for most of us it's going to be a bigger figure, it seems. Now when we looked at what they're currently using for their reference data capabilities, we did see that, again, custom built, taking a SQL Server type database or an Oracle database commonly, or even DB2, but mostly Excel is what you would find people were using for their custom built solutions. Sometimes an organization would take an existing MDM platform, an Informatica, an Oracle, DRM in particular, Oracle Data Relationship Management, or Microsoft Master Data Services, and take that and make that their platform for reference data. Sometimes the master data management vendors like Informatica, Microsoft, Oracle DRM, etc., do provide some of the workflow and some of the semantic and hierarchy management that you want for reference data, but they're not the same as a purpose-built reference data management platform. So in our opinion, most organizations are living dangerously because they're still using custom-built RDM solutions that don't provide governance to the degree that an enterprise requires. And we looked at how satisfied they are, as you might expect. 30% almost are somewhat satisfied. Less than 10% were really satisfied. So there's a lot of room for improvement in the tools and in the execution and the governance of reference data. Now, when we also look at, reference data is not a siloed onto itself. Okay, it also has to support other application areas in the portfolio. And so here you just see the overall crosswalk, if you like, how reference data would influence your general ledgers, your enterprise hierarchy management, your enterprise risk management, et cetera, or other financial, your chart of accounts, how you would map those across organizations and roll up, et cetera. And when we look at transaction processing, order management and fulfillment, et cetera, all that requires a common language. Such simple things as, if you look at the average company out there, there's a lot of companies, I won't call them average, but many companies have a brick and mortar, and then they have their online presence, which is done by eBay or somebody, and you'll see that it's two different systems. And so they have two different sets of codes, okay, and they have to map back and forth between their online presence and their brick and mortar as to how they're going to manage such simple things as color, C-O-L-O-R-S. How do they manage those as reference data across their systems and match and sizing and return data, et cetera? It can be very consequential for a company if they don't have these applications coordinated, and so on and so on. So clearly, RDM is not an isolated program. It's something that permeates, as we said. When things go bad with reference data, it goes bad across the company. So that's why IT is the catch-all, if you like, the person is the group that's responsible to make sure that the infrastructure works among the applications. Now, if you look at other domains, not necessarily enterprise applications, but domains, product, customer are classical domains, if you like, that we need to somehow link back. If you look at a common reference data domain among these might be locations or outlets, or even sometimes pricing is considered reference data, depending upon the volatility of the pricing data. Location, of course, that's a classic. Reference data, HR, human capital, et cetera. So there's a lot of interest in coordinating the different domains. For example, country codes. Why do we have to keep that? Why does each MDM platform, you might have a separate PIM, product information management vendor, who's separate from your customer data integration MDM vendor. And so why would you want to keep two different sets of country codes and all the nightmare that goes with that, all the overhead, et cetera, and the risk? So let's do it in one place. Again, the concepts of master data being applied to reference data. If you look at the actual business drivers coming out of the survey, reporting comes up over and over again, and that's still lumped together with regulatory non-compliance, because when you're looking at compliancy, it's about reporting. And so clearly reporting and compliance, those are the key issues. Likewise, the challenges of coordinating a decentralized organization. There is overhead with making, if you're a Land O'Lakes or ConAgra type conglomerate where you have, several hundred or several thousand discrete organizations you're trying to coordinate, or even if you're Shell Oil and you have 220 subsidiaries around the world, and how do you coordinate your codes that allow your financial systems to foot out, not to mention inventory roll-ups, et cetera, around the world. So clearly, we've got some business drivers here that you might expect, and they were simply confirmed by the survey. If we look at the IT drivers, the IT people, they know that metadata management to coordinate across their enterprise applications, that's a key area, and so you'll see that metadata management is one that pops up for the IT people. And again, from an IT perspective, number 2, common reporting dimensions across data marts, data warehouses, and data lakes these days. Number 3, making sure that transactions fire and coordinate between your transactional systems within your company and with your business partners in an extended supply chain. And then likewise, just getting your foot wet in data governance and in master data management, RDM is considered a prominent way to do that. It's a simple chunk that IT can bite off, budget-wise and bandwidth-wise, to get familiar with MDM concepts and data governance as a practice. And so RDM is seen as a way to get started in MDM and data governance. Earlier, when I talked about the MDM Institute, I pointed out that we have 150 large companies that are our advisory council that we provide free consulting to about their MDM, RDM, and data governance efforts. They help us over the course of our interactions with them over the course of a year. They help us come up with bucket lists of evaluation criteria that we derive from looking at their evaluation matrices, their spreadsheets that could be as detailed as 6 Sigma type spreadsheets, or they're evaluating reference data or master data management or big data analytics or data governance, etc. And so when we work with those large companies and we see what they're doing, we distill out at the highest level, to structure a conversation. Here are the top 10 evaluation criteria for multi-domain MDM. Here are the top 10 criteria for data governance software platforms. And here are the top 10 evaluation criteria for reference data. And so in this survey, we asked the panel, the pool, to tell us what their top 5 were. And in order of ranking, this is what they came up with. Number 1, just the classical referencing, your mapping of reference data across the different domains, across time, as if and effective dates, forward, past, etc. Likewise, the workflow, the responsible, accountable, consultant, informed type, RACI type model to govern the reference data creation and life cycle. And then connectivity with your other apps. What are the various ways that we are able to connect to the different systems? Number 4, hierarchy management. Again, hierarchies are how we manage the relationships in an enterprise risk management system or in our sales type geography or legal geography, mappings, etc. And then performance. Architecture and performance of interest. Not surprisingly, or surprisingly, depending upon your point of view, reference data is seen as a good application for cloud-based deployment because it's not customer-sensitive data, it's just tables. And so an easy way to get reference data published and put out in the hands of the various applications in a decentralized organization or a conglomerate that's global is to throw it up in the cloud and provide WSDL or some sort of web service against that so that the various constituencies within the conglomerate or the large company can access those standard code tables and so on. And so without going into all 10, that's the evaluation criteria that they gave us. And if you want to look at the relative percentages, again, mapping the reference data, managing the reference data, integrating the reference data with other apps, managing the hierarchy management, and then the performance and the architecture of the deployment, that was all their top. But clearly, in your view, probably, in my view, definitely, all 10 of these evaluation criteria are essential. You want to have security. You want to have end-to-end lifecycle management, onboarding, and then offloading or cycling out, aging out, etc. reference data. You want to have all that. And so these are just classical criteria, but if you're looking at the importance, how you might weigh the criteria in an evaluation, this is the way organizations are leaning. If you look at the alternatives out there to do reference data, again, you could take a metadata repository, Rocher type of capability from ASG. You could take an operational MDM hub, Informatica, Oracle, Microsoft, others. You could take business glossary like IBM's IGC, their governance capability, formerly business glossary, or you could do custom build. Okay, so there are a number of ways to do that. What was interesting is that around 35% are already looking at commercial reference data, even though there isn't an onslaught of marketing in the marketplace about this. I mean, you won't see full-page ads from Oracle or SAP or IBM promoting this. Nonetheless, 1/3 or so of the companies that are doing reference data are looking at a commercial solution. And it's also scary that an even greater number are looking at metadata repository because in our historical experience, there's a high failure rate associated with that type of metadata repository when being used for reference data. When you look at the software market itself, the MDM software market, master data management software market, is about $1 billion US, more or less equally between CDI, customer data integration, and PIM, product information management, about $500 million each. Well, within that billion of MDM software, about 50% is the mega vendors, IBM, Oracle, Informatica, SAP, And then the rest is the second and third tier vendors, if you want to call them that, or best of breed or niche, or however you characterize everybody else. The same trend falls true for reference data. We're finding that although these mega vendors platforms are being used for reference data, in particular Oracle actually has one. They have a location master, site master, and they also have their data relationship management part of Hyperion that's quite amenable to hierarchy management and reference data itself. Still, the majority of organizations are now starting to look at best-of-breed solutions. And so when we talk about multi-domain RDM, again, that's not the real-time RDM of Wall Street, etc. It's the RDM that we're talking about here in this presentation, more than 50%. So that tracks. And so what it says is that, in my experience, most companies want to use Oracle, IBM, SAP, Informatica for their main master data domains. They want to use the mega vendors for customer, product, and supplier because it's mission critical, it's highly scalable, and it's a proven vendor that they have a lot of affinity or strategic investment in already, the mega vendors. But when they look at reference data and some of the other domains for master data, they go, well, you know, the mega vendors pricing is pretty high, and you know, it's sort of overkill. They have so much overhead in their software infrastructure or platform. It's like a Mack truck to deliver an egg across the street. And we don't need all that, and we don't want to pay for it. So in our experience, there's a lot of interest in using the other non-mega vendor MDM platforms and commercial reference data management solutions to do reference data, because it's seen as something that doesn't require the complexity and the overhead of the mega vendor software platform, and we definitely don't want to pay their pricing. Now, lately, some of the vendors are adjusting their pricing, but they still haven't adjusted to the second and third tier MDM vendors or to the purpose-built RDM vendors level of pricing yet. They haven't come down to that level yet. So the bottom line, when we look at reference data management based on the survey of several hundred companies that we did this last quarter, I think you would agree that the impact of poor or non-existent reference data management or governance is profound. We didn't give you all the horror stories that we could recount, you know, the apocryphal stories, but you can only imagine what's gone wrong in companies when reference data wasn't working right. RDM is vital, not just for analytical, your data mart, reporting, etc., cross data mart, but it's also for your transactional and operational systems. Okay? The good news is that when you get started with RDM, the initial investment is manageable. You know, it's a chunk that you can bite off in terms of budget and manpower, bandwidth, etc. So it's something that's doable for most IT organizations, and it's something that won't kill your budget, like enterprise CRM, etc. We've also seen that the reference data management solutions that are built on a newer platform, not just built on relational database or spreadsheets, but ones that are built on a semantic data model, that those have the flexibility, the agility that we like in terms of the modeling reference data and the hierarchy management, etc. And so we would recommend that you look for a semantic-based platform to give you the best, most agile reference data governance. Again, just to remind ourselves, it doesn't have to be a mega vendor play. You're in good company in that more than 50% of the MDM and more than 50% of the RDM that's going into the organizations is not from the mega vendors. Okay, so it's not like it's a career risky situation in terms of picking a non-mega vendor solution to do RDM. It's not. Okay, and we should also remind ourselves that having a third-party RDM, something other than your mega vendors, is something that's a valid strategy. You know, we see it time and time again that customer, product, supplier may be done in the mega vendors MDM platform, but all the other domains, because of pricing and complexity, etc., tend to be drifting or starting in the non-mega vendor software category. And so as a summary thought here, I'd like to remind everybody in our webcast today that reference data management is becoming an entry point for a lot of organizations that are starting MDM and data governance because they see it as an easy way to get their toe wet, etc. So it's an easy way to get started. But we also want to remind you that just like we no longer build CRM or ERP systems, custom build them, you know, we buy them, we should not be building, you know, a custom built RDM solution. We should be buying it. The commercial software is there. The mega vendors, The best-of-breed vendors are providing these capabilities. It's a legitimate market. It's got its own legs. It's got its own, analyst reports covering them, et cetera. My organization, Gartner, Forrester, everybody else is now coming on board and seeing RDM as a classic IT solution market. And of course, you would be looking for a partner with a track record in reference data, and one who also has an agile, flexible data governance capability for reference data. So at this point, I'd like to pass it over to Bob DuCharme to tell us more about TopQuadrant and their capabilities in the reference data management solution market.
Thanks very much, Aaron. So as Christy mentioned earlier, my name is Bob DuCharme, and I'm a solution architect with TopQuadrant. We have solutions to meet several different business needs out there that we've been developing to take advantage of the semantic standards I'll be discussing more later. In particular, we have top-rate reference data manager, and because of that product, we were especially interested in the results of the MDM Institute study that Aaron described, to find out what are the capabilities that people they're most critical to succeeding. The critical key success criteria for an RDM system. Our solution, there's certain basic things that all reference data management solutions can do. You can load data, you can edit the data, but of the additional features that differentiate top-rate RDM, we were very happy to see how important many of those things were to customers, how people responded to the survey. So I have more slides to go through some of these in more detail, but to summarize them, the user-directed agile governance, metadata, to be able to link things, flexible modeling, these were the most important things. So let's take a look at some of those. Well, first, a little bit about top-rate reference data manager itself. It's web-based. You point and click and drag and fill out dialog boxes. It's very simple, intuitive UI. And it lets business users, it gives them the flexibility to have control instead of relying on IT staff when you need to have an agile response to evolving data needs. So in one particular question, the ability to verify that enterprise systems are using the correct reference data, almost 2/3 of people pick that. It was the most popular when they asked what are the keys to success. If we look at the actual question, it said lack of which of the following capabilities would most negatively impact success. And 63% picked this, ability to verify that they're using the correct data, the systems. Well, in a system like top-grade reference data manager, top-grade RDM, here's a screenshot showing one way that it can help people find incorrect data. We see a report that's showing some problems, and the problems are highlighted in red. It makes it easier to find them, that one code is deprecated, another one is incorrect. Not only is it showing that this DE code is incorrect, it's suggesting an appropriate one in green. The code US is not an official candidate. It's not an official code yet. It's still a candidate one. Top-grade RDM does provide workflows, so proposed changes, proposed new codes and edits to existing codes can go through a governance process. So I guess this US one in this particular case is not officially rolled out yet. Another one was an unknown resource. So this report is showing at a very detailed level what some of the problems are. There are also ways in top-grade RDM you can get a higher level view. You can get summary information about relationships between data that's ready and not data, data that's verified, not quite verified yet. This little bit here is from a dashboard that we have, and we're going to see more of that dashboard later. I want to talk about some of the more keys to success. Another ability to maintain governance information about the reference data set itself. Where it's sourced from, where it's used, who are our contacts at the company that provides it if it's external. Do we have to pay for it? How do we pay for it? How often does it change? To be able to find out these things makes it a lot easier to keep track of reference data sets, which is especially an issue when you have similar reference data sets. Two that, for example, in aviation, IATA airport codes and FAA codes, a lot of those codes are similar. And that makes it easy to mix them up, to use one when you should have used the other. And when you do that, things can fall through cracks, transactions can go awry. So this extra metadata to keep track of which is which is another thing we're going to see how top-grade reference data manager can help address. Consistency maintenance. This is another one a lot of people picked. Consistency through data quality rules. We're going to see how TopQuadrant Reference Data Manager lets you define your own data quality rules without depending on IT people to need to write programs or something like that. For example, if let's say there's a particular code that has to be 7 or 8 characters, no more or no less. You may have to ask some IT people, could you write the little bits of JavaScript to put in the web pages where we do the data entry and make sure it goes in all the right web pages? With TopQuadrant RDM, the business users maintaining the system itself, they don't have to go to IT people. They can just go to the screen where, for example, let's say we have a code list of products, and we're keeping track of these 5 pieces of information. Someone can just pick out product ID, and in this case say it must have between 7 and 8 characters. They hit save, and then the next time someone goes to edit a product ID, if they, for example, add a value that's too long, longer than 8 characters, when they go to save their work with TopQuadrant RDM, a message box will pop up and say, you violated one of these constraints. So the definition of the constraint was simply filling out a form. That same form lets you say things like a numeric value must be in this range, we must have this combination of letters and numbers, and we can see how this can be very useful at data entry time. It can also be done in batch. Aaron mentioned how some people, when they get started, before they even realize they have a reference data management problem, they have spreadsheets. They're emailing each other spreadsheets, and that can get messy, and when they're ready for a serious solution like ours, TopQuadrant RDM gives ways to automatically import spreadsheets. So we can take advantage of your legacy data very easily, but what if your spreadsheets violate the constraints? Well, in addition to checking for constraint violations at data entry time, TopQuadrant RDM also has a report that you can run in batch. You can say, of the data that we have in this data set now, show me any of our defined constraints that it violates. So this really helps a lot with data quality. The dashboard I mentioned earlier is also a big help with data quality. What you see here, it's just the top of it. We were recently talking in the company about how we need to add a little table of contents up here because there are so many other little mini reports if you scroll down from this one to show all different aspects of what stages different data sets are in, how verified the data is, connections between data sets, how much metadata is with each. So all of this adds up at a higher level to really help you get a good handle on your data quality situation. Another thing more than half of the respondents wanted to see was integration across business concepts and reference data. For example, connections between data sets. Here's another example. If we have imagine a code list of information about various trading markets. And for those trading markets, we're keeping track of their acronym, the city they're in, comments, status date, and a lot of these pieces of information. There's strings, their dates. But for the market location country, isn't just another string of text. In this case, it was set up so that the value for the market location country for a given trading market has to be one of the values from a separate code list about countries, the ISO country code list. That way, when someone fills out, for example, here's the trading market, X, and YS. Someone filled out various values for it, and when they filled out the market location country, we see that it's a hypertext link. So someone viewing this data can click on that link, and they'll be taken to the USA country code list, and they'll see any information that was assigned to it. Codes, perhaps data about who entered that code, how long this code has been valid, and that gives more context to the trading market one. We could probably see, for example, which trading markets are in the US. These relationships add to the semantics of the codes to help us understand the relationships when we can see that certain codes are using and referencing other ones. And then to take this idea of semantics a little bit further, TopQuadrant Reference Data Manager can also address this that half the people picked, capture and access to the meaning, the semantics of the reference data. Other kinds of semantics, background information about not only the individual codes themselves, but the code lists. So, for example, here, this information about market identifier codes. What is a market identifier code? How is it used? Who's using it for what? All this is additional information. You can add as much of it as you like, and this can help ensure that people are using this code list properly. At the code level, You could also store additional metadata about semantics. For example, at the bottom of the screen here, we see facts not about the countries of East Timor and Netherlands Antilles, but about the codes themselves. That East Timor was added to this list at a certain period, that for Netherlands Antilles, it was updated and it was changed at a certain point at a certain date, 1986. So for example, if some transaction came along and it had a country code of a numeric code of 532, and that's no longer a valid code, well, we can see here, that's the old code for Netherlands Antilles, it should be 530. So it's another way to have some semantics, to know more the meaning about relationships and facts about these, about your codes. So the MDM Institute issued a field report earlier this month. You can download it from our website, where they took a look at top-rated RDM, and here were some of the strengths that they talked about. It is a self-service solution. And by self-service, I earlier discussed how business users have more control over it. So just as an example, I'm going to go back a few slides. Let's say with the trading market, that you were keeping track of these 9 or 10 pieces of information about a trading market, and you decide, you know what, we have an 11th piece of information, the ABC number that comes from our ABC system. We want to store that here as well. Well, in many organizations, what you'd have to do is you have to go to the IT people and say, okay, we need a new field with trading market. It's called ABC number. It's a number that's this many digits. So please, whatever your database, whatever the table added, oh, and also all the reports that mention trading markets, it's got to show up there. All the data entry forms and the search forms, you've got to put it in all those as well. That's how it has to work in a lot of systems, to go to the IT people and ask that. Because top-rated RDM is model-driven, adding that new property here is as simple as filling out the form to add the data quality rule that we saw earlier. Someone with the appropriate permission can say, I want to add a new field to trading market. They add it, it's there. And now that it's part of the model, it will then show up on all the appropriate reports, all the appropriate search forms and edit forms. So that lets the business users not only have more control, but it lets them have a more this model-driven approach mentioned in the second bullet means that the application itself is more agile. It reflects the model more quickly. They can deal more quickly with changes to the data that's coming to them. We talked about metadata about reference data, taxonomies as well. It can support, and crosswalks. There's a feature where you can take two similar code lists and say USA in this one maps to US in this one. GBR here maps to GB over here. And then that mapping is stored in a machine-readable way so that other systems can take advantage of that. I talked about the models. I'll talk a little bit more about the semantics shortly, the semantic standards that we build on and why that's an advantage. And Aaron also mentioned the RACI-based governance, the fact that keeping track of who's responsible, who's accountable, consulted, and informed. Within top-rated RDM, there are ways to identify specific people and then set up events so that, let's say, when there's a proposed change added to this particular data set, we want to send an email to everyone who's in the I part of RACI, everyone who wanted to be informed. These kind of things can be configured so that workflows, to really help with the governance. To make the controlled vocabularies more controlled. And finally, the MDM Institute pointed out that with top-rated RDM, it can be installed on-premise in a box on-site, or it can be installed with any of the popular clouds. They pointed out some caveats to this system. One, that in current releases, there are no curated up-to-date data sets, and we're putting that together right now. It'll be ready by the end of the year. And we're just beginning to market the capabilities. It's just been available for a couple of months, but we're very excited because as we talk to more customers and find out the things that they're looking for, we see how our approach really does resonate with the kinds of things that this survey came up with. I mentioned the semantic standards a little bit. The W3C is the same standards body that gave us HTML and CSS, the standards that are the core of the World Wide Web. XML came from the W3C. RDF and the query language that goes with it, Sparkle, these are data modeling standard that forms the basis of a lot of our products. When you're using top-rated RDM, you don't need to know anything about this. It's all under the covers. But it adds a lot of flexibility. It makes it easier to take different data sets from different places, or even similar ones. Similar data sets are often even tougher because where they overlap and how they overlap is harder to keep track of. This standard, we find, makes it easier to do that. So to define relationships between new things, you're filling out a form to define a new relationship. It's really being stored underneath using these standards. So the Institute field report, their bottom line on the product, self-service. These are a lot of points I've been over. In fact, I don't know if Christy mentioned that you'll be able to download these slides. So you can see all these details. Here down at the bottom, though, their bottom line on the product is that organizations considering purchasing reference data solutions should consider top-rated RDM independent of other MDM investments. It's top-rated RDM because it's agility in interacting with other systems through the ability to define web services. Other systems can call it. It's very easy to plug into other systems, and as a specialized system to take care of your reference data management needs, it plays well with others, very well, to plug into an MDM, other components of an MDM system that might come from other vendors. The field report also described TopQuadrant as a company, how helping our customers govern information irrespective of structure and origin of location. It's because of those semantic web standards. We have found that they meet a lot of business needs that were more difficult to meet when people were using rigid relational tables. The agility of adapting to fast-changing data and data structures and integrating data from multiple sources. Mentioned some of our other products, some of our taxonomy and ontology manager, and how our founders have been doing this for a long time, beginning in their years at IBM, where they learned about these technologies and applying these technologies to meet customer needs. So just to sum up about top-rated RDM, its key features, the ability to maintain comprehensive metadata about at the code level, at the data set level, other metadata as well, metadata about the systems, about the users, and the relationships between them all. Top-rated RDM makes it easy for business users to add and change fields, to define data qualities for them, to data quality rules, to define connections between different data sets that enhance the value of them. Compliance, that's a way to put those data rules to use, is to have reports on compliance and make sure everything's being used correctly and consistently as well, to ensure data consistency. And then creating web services is very straightforward. No one has to write Java code to do it. And all of these, a lot of these features are in some other solutions as well, but where top-rated RDM really stands out is putting this power into the hands of the data stewards and business users, instead of requiring them to go to the IT people and say, can we get this within a couple of days? They can just make these changes themselves off the top when they're ready. This is all provided in an integrated environment that lets you work with your reference data, with business glossaries, structured and unstructured data, all in a web-based integrated environment. And with the end result of providing consistent results to all your different systems. Aaron mentioned he had a slide about different application areas in your portfolio: front office, middle office, back office, how these are using the data. They should all be using the same country code list. They should all be using the same currency code list. So it's easier to coordinate not only how these systems are using it, but propose changes to these lists as they go through a workflow, with something we can cover in a different session. So to learn more about this, there are a lot of, especially because of organizations like the MDM Institute, a lot of ways to learn a lot more about reference data. I mentioned that you can download these slides, and these are all hypertext links that can take you to some additional resources. Aaron, is there anything you'd like to add about this slide and some of the resources out there before we address any questions that have been entered?
Sure. Yeah, in particular, LinkedIn is a great resource because there are some reference data special interest groups that you can hyperlink through to here. Likewise, the DAMA Book of Knowledge, or Body of Knowledge, is no longer a physical book. It's a an ebook, and so that's available. There are chapters on reference data in that, and then a lot of the conferences, in particular my MDM and data governance conferences, the case studies and the best practices and the panel discussions, etc. Those are all available for downloads. Also, they're not locked down, and so there's a wealth of information now available about RDM. The last one I'd point out is Malcolm Chisholm has his Reference Data Digest, which is a free newsletter, and there's also a subscription premium version of it that also keeps you up to date with what's going on in the reference data world. So there's a great amount of resources out there to help you get started and continue your knowledge and market education and execution of an RDM platform.
Well, thanks. So, Christy, I guess we have time for a few questions, and for the ones that we don't have time for, we will be in touch. We will get in touch to address specific questions that we can't address as part of this session.
Thank you, Bob, and thank you, Aaron, for that. As Bob just indicated, if you haven't had a chance to ask a question, please do so now. We have time for a couple of those before the end of the session. So if we're ready, let's see what we do have here. It looks like we have, here's a question. Why is RDM a first logical step in your MDM strategy? So Aaron, maybe you want to address that?
Yeah, sure. Why is RDM a first logical step in MDM overall? Well, yeah. There's the pros and cons of that. There's the danger that you think that when you're doing RDM, you're doing full-bore MDM. In reality, they're related, but they're substantially different yet. You know, if you're doing customer master or product information master, that's a lot different than reference data. So just be careful that when you evaluate a software platform, don't think that you're evaluating it for transactional MDM if you're evaluating it for RDM. Okay? But with that said, RDM is a great way to get acquainted as an IT organization with the concepts of master data management and data governance. It's definitely approachable rather than boil the ocean customer master or supplier or product master. It's definitely something that's approachable budget-wise and bandwidth-wise. So it makes a lot of sense, and I've seen very large companies often start their MDM journey with an RDM execution through a center of excellence that's charged with application integration, etc. And so, again, reference data is a great way to get started.
Great, Aaron. Let's take another question. How does TopQuadrant's RDM differentiate from other products? So, Bob, you might take this one.
Well, I think the key things that separate out top-rate RDM from more typical RDM solutions are, first, its ability to store metadata at so many levels. Metadata about the data sets, about the individual codes, about the systems using the data, and more. Second is the way that business users, such as data stewards, can add and change data fields associated with their reference data on their own, if they've been granted the right permission, so that they don't have to make requests to IT staff and wait however many days for these changes to be made. This lets them bring a much more agile, let them be much more agile in how they respond to changes in the data they work with. In one of the slides, we also saw how RDM lets these same data stewards connect data sets so that, for example, like we saw, a country name on a currency code list can be a hypertext link to that country's entry on a country code list, which gives more context for the currency code. Another nice feature we saw that is special to top-rate RDM is its ability for business users to define data quality rules, often just by filling out a form. Another special feature I want to mention, because I didn't go into it too much before, is the ability to easily define new web services that other systems can call when they need up-to-date reference data. This can be as simple as creating a saved search. If I define a search and save it, and tonight someone adds new data and I run my saved search tomorrow, I'll see the results with the new data reflected, but also the saved search has a URL assigned to it that other systems in my organization can use to make a web service call to retrieve that data at any time. So that makes data integration a lot easier. I can go into more, but I want to give Aaron another chance.
Well, actually, I think that's all the time we have today. It is 12:30. I know people probably have lunch plans. So if we're not able to get to your question, we will follow up with answers to those questions in an email over the next few days. We certainly hope you found today's information valuable. We will be providing a link to the recorded presentation as well as the slides. You will be getting this in a follow-up email. And thank you everyone for your attention and your interest in today's webinar. Have a great day.